We did it.
I feel like the backgrounds keep changing.
Oh, I just like to keep you on your toes. I was going to use the likeness of Mickey Mouse, but I'm afraid Disney's going to sue us. And it turns
we
out,
don't want to do that.
and they have a lot of money, so whether they're right or wrong, they're just going to stick us in court,
Yeah. That's my image. You can't steal
that. And that's my proprietary.
that. Welcome, everybody. Happy to have you here with us for another installment of the Old Souls and Seekers podcast. We wanted to have a chat today about something that's just been coming up in several of my conversations with some of you who've reached out or wanted to join one of our programs or live events or whatever. And I was talking to someone today, and he really kind of crystallized it for me. And if he's listening, maybe he'll get a kick out of this conversation as well. But we have our live event coming up on Saturday, and he was just talking about the expectations of what he wants to accomplish and what he wants to get out of it and things like that. And I sat and I listened, and it sounded like myself a few years back and pretty much everyone that ever joins, one of these like weekend seminar type programs. And I'm sure you're already chuckling, so I'm sure you already know what I'm going to say. But, this notion of I've been struggling, I've been dealing with this, and this, I'm coming, and I really want to walk out this whole new person, and I want to feel different and have all these things happen. And I sat there and listened. And then I basically said to him, point blank, I said, every time you walk in with expectations like that of anything, just, let's just use this program as an example, but literally anything, what you walk away from generally is a world of disappointment. And that is because anytime expectations aren't met, they lead to an upset, and the level of upset is the level of which the expectations weren't met. And whether it's you have an expectation of your partner, your kids, your coworkers, or anything else, you kind of know where that leads, right? It's very rare that people meet your expectations because your expectations are incredibly high. In fact, you don't meet your own expectations, which is why you're disappointed in yourself half the time, through life. But he asked me a very interesting question afterwards. He called it energetic congruency. Mm-hmm. And it got us talking about this topic, which I really wanted to delve in with Guy today, which is this false idea, almost like delusion, I think, because we live in a world of instant gratification, right? With our phones in our hands all the time, and everything is geared towards like, I want this yesterday, not even now. It's like, just give it to me yesterday. And while we can have moments of clarity or moments of insight, those aha moments that I think we all get addicted to, I also believe, at least from my experience and the hundreds of thousands of people that at this point we've probably trained and coached, there's something that happens when we set up these expectations, when we want the result right away. We have these aha moments. In the moment, it makes us feel really great, like we learned something new. This is very exciting. But then you talk to that same person 2-3 days later, and it's like same fight with their mom or same shitty situation around work or whatever it is. And it's like, at what point are we going to get that the short, instant gratification, the part that wants it yesterday, like all that stuff doesn't work. It never sets up for long-term healing. It never sets you up for long-term, long-lasting results. And so we started talking about energetics and a lot of the work that we do here today and this alignment piece. And something that I brought through, which was new to him, was this idea that a lot of the work that we do here today is called glimpse practice. It's the same stuff that Guy and I do on a daily basis. We're glimpsing something. And in the glimpse of that something, it's like an anchor, like a little anchor point, not for our mind, because the mind, as soon as it sees this, goes, ooh, that was really cool. How do I do that again? But the mind can't get you there, right? Awareness can get you there. And so something that a mentor taught me a while ago is that when you're in these glimpses, you need not worry because awareness is actually teaching itself. Mm. And so it's almost this very like easy, laid back approach to it. Instead of having to do something, it's just putting yourself in circumstances where this happens. What I left him with was this notion, and this is kind of what I'd love for Guy to riff off of, is what we do today is more about simple, consistent practices than waiting for the next breakthrough or aha, which I know Guy and I used to chase like this mythical dragon from this seminar to that seminar, from this teacher to that teacher, waiting for this person to tell us this thing that we never heard or never heard in this way that was going to blow our minds. But again, it, like, even in my experience, rarely made the difference, whereas now our focus is really more on finding super simple practices that we can do throughout the day, dozens of times a day, and know that that creates the long-lasting results and effect that we're looking for.
I like it.
So I'll just leave it at that for you.
Can you define in your own words energetic congruency? Like, what did you mean by that when you guys talked about that, at least in context of the conversation?
Yes. So what he was like, the question was like, he's like, do you work with creating, I don't know if he said energetic congruence or energetic consistency or something like that, but basically the way that our discussion is this idea that when we do this work, we're going to experience certain new energies and certain new frequencies that run through our body, things that you've never felt before, like a deep sense of safety that you've never experienced. Like, you can't read your way into feeling that, or a deep sense of peace, or feeling like you belong, or whatever it might be. And these energetic pieces, we get like a glimpse of it, and then the mind jumps in and we kind of like shoot out of it. So what we were talking about is how to embody these frequencies, these different alignment pieces, to actually maintain them, so it doesn't just happen at this fly-by-night situation or in a seminar, or it doesn't just happen when you're sitting on your cushion and meditating, but rather you can take this out into the real world when you're driving, when you're at work, with your loved ones, etc. So like that practice of embodying these things where they are a part of you for longer.
Okay, I'm going to keep asking you to define things so they're clear for the listening public here. Sure. So like embodiment, like, because integration, embodiment, words you hear a lot in the transformational space. And so, like, again, not necessarily the right answer, but like, what would you say to somebody? How do you define embodiment or integration? Maybe different than how people think about it generally.
Yeah. I mean, I will go in a couple of different examples here. So like, for anyone that's done non-transformational work, but maybe you play an instrument or you're an athlete of some sort, to me, embodiment is when there's like an unconscious stabilization of that thing, right? So like, when I play a lot of tennis, so for me, right, like learning certain strokes, like how to serve or how to hit a forehand, at first it's very clunky, right? Because every time the ball comes to you, there's like 6 different things that you're trying to think of, like where I put my feet, how do I bend, where my elbow should go, where my head should go, like all these things. And then eventually, you watch these pros and they can hit that shot. It's like it just becomes second nature. And the same thing I think with energetic work is there's certain practices and experiences internally that when I first started were the same clunky way. It was like, that thing that we talk about, like dropping in to our system. It was this very like forced. I remember being like,
almost like trying to poop it out.
yeah, like trying to poop awareness down, and now it's not even something I have to think about. It just is like that is the baseline, right? So that's, I think, what I mean by embodiment or attunement is being able to easily stabilize these ways of being. And yes, I still, like regardless of what it is, we're all going to still toggle, but you're in it more than you're out of it. And when you're out of it for so short, and the getting back into it is so quick that it just almost is like a breathing than a thinking.
Sure. With varying experiences, certainly. I think like like I'm in a really big release process. And to be honest, it is what's different about this time. We can go into a little bit more if we want. I don't feel out of balance, which is weird. Like I'm going through such a difficult 3-4 weeks here, maybe even 6 weeks, honestly, emotionally speaking. Like what would be perceived as rather difficult, and just because like I'm not me right now, quote unquote, but it doesn't feel like I'm out of balance for the first time, which is why it feels different to go through the experience I'm in. Sure. So I want to just go back to a few things here. I got this. You mentioned glimpse practices. So just like a definition I pulled off the web is a brief, incomplete view or look, which I don't like that one because a glimpse can be complete, actually, and at least in the way that we're using it. But this one fits a little bit, a brief flash of light. Right. And so let's use that definition as like if you're in a dark room and just for a split second, there's a flash of light and you got to see everything that was in the room. Right. Now, maybe your memory can't pick up on every object. Right. But suddenly, let's say you were in the middle of the room, you're scared, you're trying to find the door, but that flash lets you see where the table is, where certain objects are, where the door is. And now you can more confidently move towards the door, even though you may not be able to see it past that initial glimpse. And so I think that's a good metaphor for what we're talking about here, because there are spiritual concepts that one cannot understand. Like, just hang with that for a moment. Like, we actually
can't. One really wants to.
Yeah. Honestly, probably most of spirituality, we actually really can't understand. We'll give it names. We'll try to map it. We'll try to tell people how to play in the territories. But it is so vast and so multidimensional and so beyond the comprehension of an ordinary mind that it's like we're doing our best walking through the dark, trying to pick up on specific patterns that might fit a subset of people, but may completely not work for somebody else and really work really well for one person. And you see this all the time. People go into therapy, or they do some kind of process, or they do some kind of diet. That particular person swears it's the best thing. It will heal everybody and take care of everything. Another person does it and they're like, this person's an idiot. This is ruining my life. Why would I do that? Right. This is we see this all the time with, what's that ketone diet? Called?
Keto?
Yeah, like keto. Yeah. What's that keto? What's that ketone diet called? Oh, keto. That one. Okay, good. You got it. You got it, champ. You could tell my brain's working. I only had a half calf this morning. It's so I'm working with a half and a calf. It's like it's just not working. Yeah. So with like a ketone diet, for some people it will like heal them completely. Other people go on ketone diets. They're like, this is destroying my life. So there's no one size fits all, which again means why glimpsing is the most important thing we can do, because while we may not be able to understand a spiritual concept or a specific pattern that's repeatable or not, we can directly experience all of it.
Yeah.
Even if we don't understand it. And so for me, energetic confluence or energetic congruence, call it whatever you will, is the ability to glimpse something and feel its truth for you. And if it's in alignment and truth for you, like you have this energetic congruency with it. The other part I want to kind of highlight here is for most people that we see, they're still in some kind of a linear process of healing, right? We have an obsession in our culture. You see it in our marketing. 4 steps to achieve this, 3 steps to do that. And to be honest, we're doing it too. And the reason is it's an easy concept for the mind to pick up. Oh, only 3 steps to reprogram my mind. That sounds good. I could do 3 steps. You call it 10 steps, they're like, that's too many steps, right? 7 steps, 3 steps. Oh, 3 steps I can do. I can walk 3 steps. So then people will come in and look at that. But the reality is that the steps are really more like. Let me back up a step here. When somebody is in the process of mastery, and I want you guys to get the personal transformation, healing, enlightenment is like everything else. It's a process of mastery.
Yeah.
You cannot go to a weekend retreat and expect to be perfectly healed. The biggest gripe we have, I'm sure as many people who are in the coaching industry as well have, is knowing how much time and money you've invested in your own inner and outer growth. And then seeing somebody go to a weekend retreat, get a certification that's worth literally a piece of paper, and go out there and start a coaching business because they learned a 3-step process on how to, like, I don't know, induce a hallucination in someone's body, right? Does that make them a capable person? I don't know. I don't really care much for certifications. It's all about alignment. Does this person feel in alignment for you? Do you want to work with them? Can they train you? So the reason I say all this is because there's a difference between linear learning and non-linear learning. And to me, healing and transformation is an art form. And something becomes an art form when you're in the process of mastery with it. Like, you've already learned how to do the steps, right? You know how to count 1, 2, 3, 4. You do it really, really well. And the art form is when you make it your own.
Yeah.
Right. So like the metaphors like dancing or really anything that you can master, there's a way that it's done initially to be taught that introduces it to a person. They're really super clunky with it in the beginning. Then it's like they get really good at doing that process to the point where they don't have to think about it. And then there's a part beyond that where they're so not thinking about it that it becomes part of their self-expression. And now it's like, not only is it embodied, it's literally being expressed through their system in a unique way that nobody else expresses it that way. Yeah. Like no 2 NBA players shoot a 3-pointer the same way. No 2 baseball players swing a bat the same way. Nobody does anything the same way when they've mastered it at any level. All right. So when you're a pro, that's kind of what it is. So healing and transformation is the same. There is a point where the maps and all these kind of processes are useful. And then there's a point where you got to detach from all of it and let your self-expression just take over and shine through it. And so this is where we can detach from process and procedure and go into the non-linearity of it. And like Elon mentioned, it stops going from being something you got to sit down and like schedule out and do to literally it's part of your beingness. You can't even help it anymore. And it just becomes a day-to-day habit. And so for me, it's like there's so many things worthwhile mastering on this planet. But I believe that if there is a purpose for us being here, it's the enlightenment. It's our individual and collective enlightenment. Like, what else could be a bigger game than stopping all the suffering on planet Earth, than stopping all our interpersonal suffering? So,
yesterday for the first time, you know how like sometimes you can like break up a word and it just like means something different. Mm-hmm. And someone said enlightenment, and I took like to enlighten, make myself lighter, enlighten me.
Yeah.
So I realized like a lot of the work that we're doing today, and this is kind of what I said to this guy. I said, I can't promise you that during our live event, you're going to have like the transformation of your life and walk out of there like a completely different human being. Although that has happened to some. We've had people, their third eyes open. Other people started to trans channel. People like had massive healings of 20 years over their heart or pain or whatever. But that's so individual to the person's journey and the soul's journey. So I was like, I cannot promise you that. I don't know that that's going to happen in that day. I said, what I can absolutely promise is that you will walk away with these simple actions that you can take on a moment by moment daily basis. These aren't like prolonged things that you need to set aside an hour of your day for. You can really do these things for like 30 seconds at a time, dozens of times throughout the day. And that consistency of action, I can guarantee, will get you the results.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know if the results come because you've already done X, Y, and Z, and things are just right there on the surface, and like you're going to do that practice, and it's going to be like, wow, holy shit. But like Mark, for example, who commented here, he's done tons of meditation and tons of work and this and that, and walked into our space and was really interested to learn how to experience certain things. Like he was told that he had this condition and that condition, whatever. And I said, listen, I don't know how long it'll take you, but if you stick down this path, the world's your oyster. Like it just gets better and juicier and juicier. And he even said it took him 2 months of consistent work to get to a place where transformations happen. And if Mark, you're listening and you want to just drop in, like, what's life look like today? How is transformation occurring in your world today? Are you finding that it's just happening more and more often, or like you're having deeper and deeper insights by using these really, really simple actions? That to me is where the gold is. Like I shared on our live maybe like 2 weeks ago, the biggest breakthrough ever, like that I've ever had. And I can tell you, it wasn't a understanding breakthrough. I didn't have an aha moment where I was like, oh, that's what's been holding me back. No,
Right.
I had a physical release, an internal physical release that at the time was happening, was hands down one of the most painful physical experiences of my life. If you gave me an out at any point during that and were like, you don't need to do this, I would have gladly stopped. It was excruciating to go through. And the other side of it has been the most sustained, blissful experience of my entire life. Like, I walk through life in awe. I cry multiple times a day as love just pours through me. And I don't know from what or how.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've read all the books where people talk about that happening and they've had this enlightenment experience and da da da. Like, and I've also had glimpses, but never a sustained experience of life in this way. Right? And it took me 20 years of consistent personal development work, plant medicine, meditations, qigongs, healings, da 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 da, to get me to that. That's just me. Somebody
That's,
else could they're sleeping on a park bench and lightning strikes and they have the fucking experience. Like I just don't know how it happens.
yeah. You never really know. And so, yeah. Right. And to pass lives into account,
Absolutely.
whatever destiny is and karma and all the rest of it. And like, there definitely seems to be a rhythm to all these things. I started thinking recently of like the field as like where the orchestra and the field is like the conductor. And so like the conductor doesn't always, sometimes it tells the band to stop playing or a certain part of the band to stop playing. There's an orchestration that's happening all the time. And we get to kind of like look to and learn from this divine energy about when to take action, when to slow our roll, when to soften, when to harden. Like, there's all these different things. But just to kind of go back into the processes, as you were saying, I think with a lot of times when you go study something, it feels like, oh, I'm going to learn this and then it's over. When the reality is like, I'm going to learn this and then it's just beginning.
Yeah.
Like I know we just completed our 2 years in a mystery school. If you guys don't know what mystery school is, it's kind of like think of it like a PhD or master's degree in energetics, healing, and awareness practices. And And it's like when the program completed at 2 years, I didn't feel like, oh, good, now I have all this. I'm like, okay, good, now I get to start practicing all this. And we had about 3 years of work prior to that in a more intimate settings, and that continues because it's so valuable. And so I think, again, like when we're given a tool, when we're given a way, because there is probably infinite paths to enlightenment, right? There's a few really, really well structured ones like Buddhism and stuff like that have been around for a while and have proven successful for many people. Maybe not to be like a Buddha or Jesus or anything like that, but to certainly enlighten human beings and make them aware of things that most people are not. And there's like really mystical, magical things happening all over our planet that many of us are not privy to because we're way too obsessed with science and have completely like obfuscated this whole other thing that exists. But that's coming back around. Everything comes in cycles. So yeah, I think it's really important to understand that, again, when we're learning anything, you come to one of our events, you're not like, okay, good. Like I did that for 24 hours. Like, it's great. It's like, that's just the beginning of, hey, now are you going to cultivate this practice? Are you going to build this energy in your body? Are you going to build a new foundation within yourself? And then there's all the unexpected delayering that happens, deculturation that happens, everything that happens when you can finally get a glimpse and a sense of returning to yourself, and everything that's not that has to fall away. Like it's funny because Elon's experiencing, like we went through a very similar healing process. We have some of the same, call it, blockages in our system, and like his system opened up into a lot of spaciousness and bliss. It sounds like me. It's like I went through a similar healing process, and for me, it's like everything that was keeping a life's worth of sadness and negativity at bay, the dam fell off, and so it's all coming back into my system now to be experienced. But like I could tell you truthfully, it's like when you're in heartbreak or you become hopeless or something like that, I cannot offer that that's a pleasant place to be at the level of sensation. What I can offer is that like you'll never be free from it until you can be with it.
Yeah.
And at no point in my life have I been able to be free of it, basically. What I now see when I used to do a lot of mindset work is that I learned a lot of good tools, how to manage what was happening, compartmentalize it, and then build new identities that from whatever perception I was at the age of 19, let's say, to 30 something, I had a particular idea of what being successful looked like, being healthy looked like, being connected to people look like. And so I started building new identities, just like a child would when they're trying to find safety again in their life. I built all these identities. And as honestly great as some of them have been, and some of the roles I've gotten to play and things I've gotten to do in my life, which have been extraordinary, it's not me still. And that's what I'm coming up against, is like this mask that I'm going to call myself out on, but I imagine we're all doing, a mask that we all live with. When we try to authentically connect with one another, and you can not know, but like feel how you are becoming something other than what you are in that moment, to try to like put on a good face for other people or look a certain way in the eyes of others. It's the same thing we do on social media with all our posts. It's like, right, it's the same micro macro playing itself out all over the place. But for whatever reason, and this is not a like, wow, new thought for me, right? Like I've known this for 20 years, but for whatever reason, these like big chunky layers are coming off my system. And it's like so obvious to me in a new way that's hard to describe, that I'm like, wow, okay, we're still playing this. And it's really a chess match I play with myself. It has nothing to do with anybody else. And so for me, like the last, going into our last module at that mystery school was very difficult because of the energies we were in. And then it has not been bliss at all. In my experience, it's been, and it hasn't been bad either. It's kind of gone like really into like what feels like pretty deep feelings of depression and sadness. And then I'm like stable again. What I will say though is, because like I'm clear that it has taken many years of cultivating energy to find a certain stability in my system for my system to feel safe enough to release this much stuff at one time.
Yeah,
And for
exactly.
me to have the wherewithal to not run from it or try to figure out what's going on or change the story or paradigm or create a new identity that can manage this stuff. It's like it's like cold brew. Like it's gonna drip out at whatever pace it drips out. And like I'm either gonna it kind of hit me this morning while I was meditating. It's like you can observe or you can interpret. You decide what you want to do. So it's like I can sit in the observance, know that I have no control over what's happening right now, how my system releases this stuff, and in what time, or I can sit here and interpret and then try to manage what's occurring
Yeah,
with the best of intentions. And it won't work. And it's the same reason that when you're in a issue with your relationship, and instead of just observing what's happening between you and the other that may not be working, you're trying to interpret what they're doing and then interpret what you're thinking and then apply what you think is supposed to happen in that moment versus like what is actually trying to be revealed here, and can you sit with it until that's revealed to you. And so
yeah.
that's kind of what my experience has been.
Yeah, it's interesting. Judith wrote, I hear you, it can be painful, but the release was nirvana. I feel in love with myself in a way no one has ever loved me. Such a beautiful thing. And I will offer that we've all heard this line, right? Like the only way out is through, the only way out is in. Guy pointed to it. A lot of personal development work gives you tools to hide these parts from yourself in a very, very elevated and smart way, right? You can reframe the things and the situations in your life. You know how to have certain conversations. You know how to do all of these things. But what you start to notice is that life keeps bringing you back to these same events, right? Like to the same heartbreak, to the same disappointment, to the same feeling not good enough, to the same I'm lonely. And then you've just created really, really good strategies on how to get through it or overcome it. And what you think is progress is, oh, last time when this happened, I was debilitated by feeling alone or by heartbreak for 2 weeks. And this time it only took me a week to bounce back. And this time it only took me 3 days to bounce back, or a week or a day. And like that's how we associate with progress when we're in the world of personal development. But it doesn't matter how long you're at this, you're going to keep looping back to these same things, because the only way for the enlightenment, right, like the release of, to make light of happen, is by you sitting with it and being with it and feeling it all the way through. Not touching it, which is what I did with, the wall in my heart. Like I'd experienced it, I touched it, I knew about it. I created all these incredible strategies around it, to the point that like even the woman that was doing healing on me, she's like, you've done an exceptional job of living a life while having this inside of you. And I was like, yeah, I have.
Mhm.
But when you really go into the depth of it, and it takes what Guy said, which is we spent years cultivating a level of safety and stability in our system. And without that, there is no way that you'd even be able to explore these depths of you, because it won't feel safe. And your mind, the second it even senses that you're going in that direction, it will do all of those things that you've trained it to do to get you the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
And so if you're really highly trained in personal development, you know those strategies. You know what you do. You have all these reframe tactics. You have all these ways to like pump yourself up and overcome this thing, and oh, you're not going to hold me back,
Power
right?
through it. Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't had those experiences, then you might lean into things like wine, alcohol, smoking, eating, just going like knocking yourself out with pills to go to sleep, like whatever it is, you have strategies. Because when this charge hits the system and the system goes, this is too much, you automatically go into strategy. What we have cultivated is the ability to hold more and more and more of that charge in our system, which, like Guy's pointing to, doesn't always feel incredible at times.
No.
at times, like the level of sadness or grief or terror that you can hold in your system is so beyond what you've ever experienced in a way that is, it's like observing it from a bit of a distance where you're not in it. You're just, you can feel it, you can observe it, but you're not in it having the experience. So there's a level of safety that's there that's never been before. And it's the only way that we have found thus far in the 20-year search that's allowed us to get to this level of healing. And the beauty is, to what Judith was saying, is like, yes, nirvana is on the other side. Because when this energy block that's been a part of you for so long gets released, the amount of new resource and energy, wisdom, gifts, intuition, manifestation, like all the things that you are wanting, that you're trying to figure out how, just naturally falls in. And because it is a part of you. But two things can't occupy the same space at the same time. So the only way is to release that in order to bring that new energy through.
Yeah. And I think that's the real question, is like, what is it, how much work or what does it take for your particular system to disarm itself to the point where the automated processes won't kick in to protect you when you're feeling that level of fear, uncertainty, or worry, or whatever it might be that concerns your system, that creates worry and stress and overwhelm in our systems. We all have the things that we do, but the things that we do were made in moments of stress as a child. It was strategies you created a long time ago, and the reality is they are deficient. They're old and they are inept for the world that we're dealing with. And most of us are never give ourselves or given the opportunity to reprogram that. I know there's so much language about it, reprogramming subconscious, and in aspects we are talking about that. But what we're saying is, you're not the one that's now sitting there going, I don't like this aspect of myself, we need to turn it into this aspect of myself. Because again, like, you may have an idea of what success or freedom or surrender looks like for you, and then you go do that thing and it's anything but. It's actually just another prison. And so a lot of times we're like this dog chasing the tail, living inside this prison within ourselves, when there is what feels like a more authentic way to be a human being. I don't know how else to say it, and that's probably not the right language for it. That has nothing to do with you interpreting what's coming at you. Because you guys got to get, like, everything that we're all doing, me and Elon included, all our teachers, pretty much everyone on planet Earth, we're interpreting life through conditioning that was given to us, put upon us before we ever even had an idea that was happening. It's like inception. It's like inception's being done on the whole planet, and there's a view. And so how we're viewing reality is born of this conditioning. Yeah. And so it's like coming out of the matrix, so to speak, is really feeling through the dark. Like, if we couldn't use our eyes and we couldn't use our ears to get through that dark room, which is basically what we're all in, and the only thing we can do is trust our direct experience in that moment. It's like our intuition says go left, you go left. We feel pain in our right leg, so we know don't keep walking where the pain is. Like, that's a direct experience. That's your environment giving you feedback, showing you how to find your way out of the dark. But most of us are like, I'm in the dark, let's invent a light bulb. Let's do all these things, which on the surface may seem helpful, but they don't let you develop who you truly are. And so we hear that in society all the time. I'm going to go on this trip to find who I am. But it's like, there's nothing in this world that's going to teach you who you are. There are things you like. There are things you're called to. You want to study. You want to master. That's awesome. But like the journey of finding the authentic self is a journey inside, of connecting to divine spirit, not through a medium, but through your own system, is the journey inside. We will not find that outside of ourselves. Yeah. We've been trying that for way too long. And so there is an invitation here. Again, even if you're not, I say this all the time, even if you're not exactly clear about what Elon and I are talking about, it's really challenging to put this stuff into words. It's much easier to take people through an experience and point at something, like Elon said, and have them glimpse an experience that they've never experienced before directly in their system. And then the system goes, oh,
Yeah.
that. I don't know what that is, but it is. Like Elon said,
And
there's an
you can't
isness.
feel that. You can't, like, a felt experience of something is so profound because it is your truth. It's unarguable with, right? Like, someone
Unforgettable.
can't go like, you didn't feel that. The fuck do they know, right? Like, you had an experience. Like, I had an experience. As crazy as it sounds when I tell it to people, like, that was my experience. That is my real as lived experience. It doesn't need any proof. It is your proof. You are the truth of it. So when you have that, it gives you these anchor points that you can continuously go back to and keep deepening this, not from a mental construct, but from a felt sense place. And if you've done enough personal development work, and like Jason, is writing, is like, I'm literally Googling how to release emotion. It's crazy. It's like when you've done enough like personal development work, you realize the limitations of that work. And then you do end up going to Google things like that because you realize, like, I don't want more understanding. I don't want to know how I operate, how they operate, how the world operates. I just want this gone. I want these things healed. I want to experience life newly. And I share this, I think, on that. But Reggie Ray talks about the difference between, like, a horizontal education and a vertical or horizontal transformation and vertical transformation. Horizontal is that world. It's like, I'm going to collect more data and more information, right? And as you collect more data and more information, yes, you have breakthroughs, and yes, you have transformations, but they're linear. When you're talking about this vertical transformation that Guy and I are pointing to right now, it's like, I walked out of that healing session and Guy walked out of his healing session, different human beings. I can't unsee what I saw, and I can't experience the world back the way I used to. It's impossible. So when we do these vertical transformations, it's like you jump into this different timeline where in that timeline, you are different. The way you perceive the world is different. The way others show up in your world is different. Like, everything morphs and changes in the blink of an eye. And I think when people are doing personal development, like, it is what we want. But when we go into these seminars and we expect that that's just going to happen because someone's going to say this thing, it never does that. And I think that's if you're wanting these kind of experiences, I think you get to put yourself in groups and fields that will allow you to experience that level of energy and not just understand it. So again, like, this Saturday, we're doing our live event. It's going to be an all-day live event. If you're interested, you can head over to satoriprime.com/live. There's still tickets available. I will tell you, grab them now because there's pre-course material that we encourage you to go through. This is the stuff that's going to help bubble all of these things that have been hidden from you to the surface so that when you show up on Saturday, we can actually go right to work on those things. So if this is calling to you, just jump on it right now. Come have this experience on Saturday and feel for yourself the difference between this and everything else that you've ever done before.
Awesome. Yeah. And even if you're listening to this podcast much later, this video much later, we always schedule out future events. That same link will take you to whatever date the next event is. But of course, if you're kind of wanting to explore this now, jump on that right now, satoriprime.com/live. And yeah, I really want to just tell you guys, like, you can't brute force this stuff. It really has its own divine timing. It's really about you cultivating and creating stability in the system so that these much larger experiences can begin happening in their system. Otherwise, it's just horror for people. Like, you can go have a huge release and brute force it, but you're not going to have the stability to be able to integrate it. And it's going to be just you screaming on the way down. It really, really does take something to get to a place of that alignment and stability. So again, that's what these programs are all about. Is about helping you guys find those not just mental places of stability, but create a deep foundation in the way that the construction and organization of your energetic and somatic body is, in order to create that level of stability so you can have those big experiences. All right. We love you very much. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye, everybody.